A narrow service stair behind velvet walls at Versailles. Resin and candle smoke cling to the air. A girl's shoes hesitate on the step. A footman waits below, eyes fixed on the polished floor. Above them, a hidden door clicks. Somewhere in the maze, a bell rings. Once, then twice. An instruction known to a handful of servants and a police officer who will never admit he was here. A clerk in the next wing copies a number into a leather ledger. He never writes names, only stipends and dry phrases like upkeep. He closes the book, presses the latch, and slides it into a locked drawer. He has been told the king needs quiet. He has been told the kingdom depends on quiet. In the great gallery, portraits of queens and saints hold their poses. In the back stair, the girl inhales, squares her shoulders, and steps into the lamplight. The corridor is beautiful and soundless. It was built that way. The bell rings a third time. The ledger will balance. The story will not. Palaces advertised virtue in public. Marble, banners, and carefully staged piety made kings look like fathers of nations. Yet behind the frescoes stood architecture designed for silence. Back staircases, mezzanines, private apartments, and doors that did not appear on the official plans. This story stays within Eurasian monarchies, 1500-1750, from Korea's Joseon court to Tudor and Bourbon palaces, from the Ming and early Qing in China to the Ottoman Topkapi and Morocco's Meknes. The question is not who was the worst, a moral ranking impossible to prove. The question is how systems let royal desire become policy, and how women, often nameless in ledgers, paid the cost. Public grandeur meant processions, sermons, and proclamations about family and order. Hidden reality meant conscription of entertainers into courts, gifts of daughters from provincial elites, or stipends that followed a woman into the shadows. Records suggest some women pursued palace life for security or advancement. Others arrived through pressure, debt, or direct orders. Historians debate key details, for example, whether certain apartments were true harems or more ad hoc arrangements, but the pattern is visible across regions. Bureaucracy served appetite. What survives is not rumor alone. There are court rolls, edicts, and chronicles. There are police budgets and confiscated pamphlets, midwives' notes, and memoirs penned by officials who feared they might be next. The grandeur was public. The damage, administrative. Hold the two images together, a coronation balcony and a shuttered side door. The crown teaches the nation how to behave. The corridor teaches what power gets away with, and the corridor has a map. The map points to rooms not listed on tours. Start with paper. Paper outlasts whispers. Seoul, 1506, Joseon Dynasty. The Annals of the Joseon Dynasty record that King Yeonsangun conscripted Kisang, professional entertainers, into the palace and seized nobles' daughters, prompting elite resistance. The coup of 1506 deposed him. Officials cited moral chaos and abuse as causes. The language is formal, disorder, improper levies. Yet the court roll makes human lives into administrative objects. This is not a scandal sheet, it is a ledger of policy. London, 1536, Tudor England. The trial and execution of Anne Boleyn show royal intimacy turned into state theater. In May 1536, indictments listed alleged betrayals contested by many scholars to legally dissolve a marriage that had reshaped the kingdom. The case files in letters and papers, foreign and domestic, Henry VIII, and documents at the National Archives read like a cross between love letters and a tax manual. Marriage here was not private. It was a machine that altered land, church, and bodies. Source Q. Archive Church State Papers. Beijing, 1510-1521. Ming China. The Zhengde Emperor's leopard quarter, Baofeng, appears in the Ming Shilu, veritable records, and later histories. Records suggest he withdrew to a walled pleasure compound, leaving governance to favorites and the embroidered guards. Moralist officials condemn disorder, and later chroniclers add lurid detail, which scholars debate. Still, the core is administrative: budgets, guard rotations, and orders that moved women in and out under the seal of the state. Each entry is dry. Each implies a chain. A superior orders, a clerk drafts, a courier delivers, a door opens. There are cut marks, not on bone but on lists. Names struck, stipends revised, apartments reassigned. Stratigraphy exists in the archive. An edict layers over a complaint, which layers over a receipt for silk. Wherever the truth is contested, the bureaucracy is not. The system functioned, even when it claimed to be virtuous. If these events come from different courts, the paperwork rhymes. And when paperwork rhymes, a pattern is prosecutable. The pattern has architects, paid on time and in cash. Who ordered and who suffered? At the top, a monarch with constitutional or customary impunity. Around him, concentric rings, mother queen or queen consort, chief eunuchs or chamberlains, a policing arm, physicians and midwives, treasurers, scribes. Each ring converted desire into logistics, architecture, private apartments behind public halls, courtyards accessible by service corridors, pavilions with screened windows, gates with one-way locks. In France, later historians point to side residences, like the discreet houses tied to Louis XV's Parc aux Cerfs, though the precise structure and number remain debated. In Topkapi, the harem, literally protected place, was a domestic and political center with its own hierarchy, not simply a fantasy space. Nuance note: in Ottoman usage, harem refers to the private household domain, policed and ritualized. It is is not inherently erotic. Bureaucracy. Clerks drafted allowances. Physicians performed exams that blurred care and control. Police tracked gossip when gossip threatened order. Ledger entries anonymized women into provisions. Upkeep. Linen. Where naming endangered the palace, aliases appeared. Mademoiselle L, a certain daughter of X. Incentives. Money bought silence and loyalty. A noble might offer a niece to gain access. A provincial governor might send gifts to secure tax relief. If the king's mood moved markets, then access was a currency with an exchange rate. Costs and enforcement. Refusal could mean family penalties. Taxes re-evaluated. Position stalled, or in some courts, forced reassignment to far provinces. For women inside, the threat was administrative disappearance, a transfer, a sudden marriage arranged with a stipend, or placement in a convent or remote residence. Records suggest midwives and elder attendants mediated outcomes, sometimes protecting, sometimes enforcing cause and effect. Royal appetite, orders, movement of people, secrecy, rumors, institutional response, censorship or spectacle. The machine amplified the king's body into policy. Systems do not breathe. People do, but people trapped inside systems learn how to hold their breath. The first breath held is at the threshold door. They called it tribute. They called it honor. They called it opportunity. In several regions, local elites sent daughters to court as part of alliance building. Sometimes these were educational placements with real prestige. Sometimes the line between patronage and coercion blurred. In Joseon, the category of kiseng supplied skilled artists to state rituals, but records show forced summonses, prompting backlash when numbers rose or standards dropped. In Ming China, palace recruitment had ritual roots, yet the leopard quarter operated with exceptions, guarded by men whose salaries were paid on time. In Europe, court society ran on introductions, a dance, a salon, a letter pressed into a hand. Families calculated risk against advantage. Recruitment also came by police proxy. A Paris officer might carry a message from a minister. The note never threatened. It merely requested a visit. Refusal demanded courage and a shield of rank. Not everyone had both. Women were not passive figures on a chessboard. Some navigated toward influence and protection, becoming patrons themselves. Others attempted to leave and found the door watched. Records suggest a category of silent bargains. A stipend for a season. A cousin lifted to an office. An ailing brother's debt cleared. Consent. Caught in a web of consequences. They were courted. They were collected. They were classified. Mini-cliff. Classification made the next step easy to justify. Secrecy required design. Rooms without windows facing the street. Carriages with curtains. Staircases that met at odd angles so one could exit unseen. Architects received commissions. Locksmiths filed new keys. Servants memorized signals. 2 bells, then 1. Names became initials. Apartments became houses. Under protection. In Versailles' orbit, later writers pointed to discreet residences funded through civil lists and private treasuries. Scholars debate the exact structures of the so-called parc aux cerfs, but agree that the police knew what they needed to know and looked away where order demanded. Secrecy needed a legal story. In Tudor England, the king's court itself produced law. The spectacle of marriage, annulled, replaced, created a narrative that made private conduct a matter of doctrine and treason. In Ottoman Istanbul, the harem's rules were household law, powerful yet partly invisible to outside chroniclers, which is why later European tales of madness and orgies must be treated carefully. Hostile sources embroidered. But even when gossip lies, budgets do not. The number of guards increases. The laundry bill rises. A pantry ledger lists special deliveries. They were renamed. They were relocated. They were rendered invisible. Minicliff. Invisibility required watchers at every turn. Surveillance was ritualized. A chief of guards kept a log. A physician wrote, fit to appear, or confined to quarters. Midwives took notes, their vocabulary clinical. Eunuchs, where courts used them, controlled doors and schedules. In France, notaries drew up small contracts, tolerant of ambiguity. In Morocco, chroniclers described strict rules inside Meknes Palace, where entry and exit were tightly controlled. In Ming Beijing, the embroidered guards enforced the emperor's seclusion with precision. Surveillance also meant reputation management. In Paris, the lieutenant of police ran informants across printers and salons. In Joseon, censors submitted memorials scolding royal excess. Sometimes it worked. Often it led to exile. In every court, rumor was both threat and tool. A well-placed whisper could end a rival's fortunes or worse. The surveillance state watched women for the king and watched the king for the state. They were measured. They were monitored. They were managed. Management fails when fear outruns loyalty. When arrangements soured, punishment arrived as procedure. A woman might be married off to a minor courtier and sent to the provinces with a stipend. A convent door might open. A ship might sail. In Ottoman Istanbul, palace women who crossed political lines could be exiled within the household's own geography, moved from influence to isolation. In East Asia, demotion could be as simple as a change in roster, recorded without adjectives. Records suggest some kings punished women in ways later accounts exaggerated. Scholars debate lurid stories about Ottoman Sultan Ibrahim R. 1640-1648. While he was deposed and killed in a coup, much of the sexualized gossip comes from hostile or later sources. Yet the coup itself is certain, and the redistribution of palace women and afterward appears in payrolls and orders. The system punished even when the stories lie. Elsewhere, punishment targeted families. A father's position dissolved. A brother's exam score questioned. The message was clear. Exit at the palace's pleasure. They were banished. They were bargained away. They were erased from the page. Erasure sets the stage for revolt. Seoul, September 1506. Pre-dawn. The palace stones hold the nights cool. Crickets. A gate creaks, then stills. Inside the eastern corridor, two officials stand with their hats in their hands. Their sleeves hide hands that shake. The first official unrolls a silk document. The script glows in lamplight. A royal edict, stripped of a name. The words accuse disorder, waste, and the seizure of citizens for pleasure. In the margins, a registrar has left a tiny sigil, proof the Bureau of Censors has made its case. The men know the risks. Joseon has punished censure before, but outside on the stone steps, soldiers shift their weight. The coup is already moving. An old woman, an attendant, passes the corridor's end, a tray balanced on her palm. She pauses, eyes the lamplight, and vanishes. Somewhere behind the wall, a young singer coughs, unaware that history has chosen a morning. The chief conspirator arrives, ink on his thumb from too many drafts in too few hours. He nods to the guards. The ranks kneel, then rise in practiced silence. He takes the edict and breathes into his ribs. The air smells of oil and paper. He is about to make a moral argument as a military action. They move quickly into one chamber, then another. The scribe keeps pace, logging each door. Opened, sealed, occupied. A junior officer reads from a list of names. Ministers to be arrested, servants to be reassigned. When they pass a side hall, the conspirator hesitates. He knows this corridor. He has heard of its summons. He has heard of daughters delivered here under euphemisms. He raises a hand. Two soldiers peel away, instructed to guard without entering. The plan is not to rescue. It is to stop the machine. In the inner court, a bell rings. The king's chamber door is barred. For a moment, the future wavers like heat. If the door opens, and if the king appears with the right words and the right witnesses, the coup will fail. Years of fear will continue. If the door stays closed, governance belongs to the paper in his sleeve. The door stays closed. By sunrise, proclamations reach the city. The people will hear that an immoral king is removed for the good of the realm. Inside, attendants shuffle, and women wait at thresholds for orders that have not yet arrived. A minister's wife clutches a letter she will never send. The scribe writes, dispositions made, apartments sealed, persons accounted for. He draws a line. No one names the singer. She will be counted among persons. She will receive a new designation, moved to residence, and a stipend that will arrive late. Her father will never again stand straight in the marketplace. The conspirator rests his head against cool stone. Just once. He is relieved. He is ashamed. He knows what the documents will say and what they will not. Revolutions clean the stage but spare the scenery. Outside, the city wakes. The crickets stop. The bells answer each other. Inside, a ledger waits for new entries. And the corridor, obedient to power, learns a new set of footsteps. Minicliff. The machine changes hands. It does not change shape. Meknes, c. 1700. Alawite, Morocco. The reign of Sultan Moulay Ismail, 1672-1727, generated claims of extraordinary fertility, over 800 or even 1,000 children. A 2014 PLOS One study modeled whether such numbers were biologically possible given constraints, concluding they were within the realm of possibility under specific assumptions. Earlier accounts by European visitors like Dominique Busneau, 1714, relayed numbers secondhand, sometimes colored by exoticism. Scholars debate the exact count, but everyone agrees the harem complex was large and tightly policed, with strict architecture and schedules. Versailles, Paris, 1749-1764, Bourbon, France. The so-called Parc aux Cerfs, alleged discreet housing tied to Louis XV's private life, appears in police reports, ministerial correspondence, and later biographies, e.g. Michel Antoine's Louis XV. Modern historians and Versailles curators warn against imagining a formalized harem. Evidence points to ad hoc arrangements, apartments, and a small network of intermediaries. Meanwhile, Paris police and royal censors actively seized pamphlets, libelles, that attacked the king's sexuality, not to protect victims but to protect state legitimacy. Robert Darnton documents these seizures from the Bastille and police archives, including arrests of illegal printers in the 1750s-60s. That is named censorship, not a theory, an institution acting on specific dates. Debate is healthy. For Ottoman Sultan Ibrahim Zafarnur 1640-1648, the most lurid tales likely exaggerate or invent, filtered through hostile chroniclers and later European fantasia. Leslie Pierce's The Imperial Harem urges caution and foregrounds household politics over stereotypes, but the deposal of Ibrahim and redistribution of the harem's hierarchy are well attested in Ottoman chronicles. Across these cases, disagreement focuses on scale, not existence. The system appears even when the stories disagree on its extravagance. When details blur, the budgets come into focus. Here is the final turn. The king's body was public policy, not metaphorically, literally. His marriages rewrote property lines, Tudor England. His liaisons reshaped court factions. Bourbon, France. His seclusion or excess altered tax rhythms and military appointments. Ming China, Ottoman Istanbul, Alawite Morocco. The system mapped his appetite onto women's lives using the language of governance. Appointments, allowances, confinements, relocations. Why did institutions cooperate? Because royal intimacy was a profit engine. Cooks, tailors, jewelers, designers, midwives, coaches. An entire economy thrived in the penumbra of proximity. Ministers bartered access. Police sold quiet. Printers gambled on scandal. When rumors rose, the state responded not to rescue but to control narrative. That is why the Paris police raided presses. It is why Joseon censors risked punishment to complain in formal memorials. It is why Ottoman household law remained partly invisible. Control the archive, control the story. Yet the archive did not vanish. It calcified into the very evidence now used to study the past. Court rolls, memorials, ledgers. What looks like perversion today would have been reason of state to contemporaries, framed as household management or dynastic security. That is the final reframing. This was not only vice, it was ideology. Patriarchal sovereignty fused to administrative reach. Incentives locked it in place. Punishment silenced dissent. Secrecy shielded operations. But secrecy breeds rumor, and rumor corrodes authority. Over time, the very network built to hide abuse made monarchy brittle. In France, whispers of a king set apart from his people deepened mistrust that later would explode. In Joseon, a king's misconduct helped justify a coup. In Ottoman Istanbul, palace households became battlegrounds where household politics toppled rulers. In Morocco, monumental palaces testified to power, but also to its anxieties. No system is permanent. The women who survived did so by reading those systems, choosing moments, forging alliances, protecting each other when possible. Records suggest some gained influence, patronage, and meaningful agency. Others disappeared into the categories that hid them. The human cost cannot be measured in stipends or floor plans. So what reframes everything? The realization that administration, ethical or not, is what makes abuse scalable. Kings come and go. Corridors remain. If institutions can convert desire into policy, they can also convert accountability into habit. The same ledgers that paid hush money can fund oversight. The same police who defended reputation can defend people. The difference is not architecture. The difference is what the paperwork is for. The corridor cannot choose. Only those who build it can. Retrace the steps to the opening staircase. A bell rings. A girl hesitates. A clerk closes a ledger. In 1500-1750, across Eurasia, many courts treated women as entries in a system. Recruitments to be managed, bodies to be policed, reputations to be protected. Today the forms have changed, but the lesson holds. Institutions amplify character. If character is predatory, systems magnify harm. If character is accountable, systems can cushion the vulnerable. Scholars will continue to debate the scale of certain claims. That is healthy. What this script has shown, with names and dates, is not a list of monsters, but a set of mechanisms that allowed abuse to pose as order. The palace's beauty was real. So was the harm conducted in their shadows. Picture that staircase again. The candle smoke, the click of a private latch. Then picture a different scene. A public document that names, counts, limits, protects. The same tools. A different ethic. In the end, the corridor remembers footsteps. It cannot forget. But it can be repurposed. And the bell, once a summons to silence, can be a call to testimony. Next time, the lens shifts to imperial Rome, where rumor could dethrone emperors and palaces became echo chambers of accusation. When the historian Suetonius wrote about imperial vices, did he reveal reality or craft political theater? And how much power did a whisper on Capri truly have? If this episode helped untangle spectacle from system, like the video, subscribe for the next deep dive, and comment with the era you want mapped next. Precision matters, so do your questions.